Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hello, one and all. Welcome to episode 11 of Monorail Memoirs. Today we will be discussing the best queues in Walt Disney World. At the end of last week's episode, which was the worst queues, as soon as we hung up, Lauren just went, "How dare you? Where have you been? No note, car gone. You could have died." So suffice to say, it was interesting again that we had no similar points. I have another apology to make. I forgot at the end of last week to talk about Lauren's favourite pointing direction, which is the ticker across the bottom. You can follow us at Monorail Memoirs on Instagram and TikTok. You can email us at monorailmemoirs@gmail.com, and you can comment directly into the YouTube thread and we will make sure to reply. There is, however, one other thing to point out. Last week, somebody has bought us a coffee. Lauren, I don't know if you're aware, somebody's bought us a coffee. So thank you to Clara for buying us a coffee. It is much appreciated. We all hope that people just enjoy this content. We do it because it's a passion project for us. There is by no means any money-making effort to be made here. We're just having a good time. But we appreciate the support and appreciate you very much. So thank you. With that said, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good, except I've got to fly and it's doing my head in. It's England, it's summertime, we're going to get flies. And we've got some new bifold doors as well, so they just come straight in. It's like an open house for all the insects. So, yeah, I've just got a really annoying fly, so I'm really sorry if you can hear it.
Well, I can't hear it because it's probably not big enough to be picked up by the microphone, obviously. Today I'm sporting my Alani hat. Yes, yes, and it's last October I went, but actually it was at Alani that I became a member of DBC and made one of the worst financial decisions of my life, but absolutely one of the best decisions in terms of things that we want to do going forward. So let's talk about some of the best queues. Last week we talked about the worst ones. Lauren, what makes a good queue? What makes us enjoy a queue in Walt Disney World?
Air conditioning.
Fact.
So aircon, obviously, I mean, for a Brit over there, it's always going to be hot regardless of the time of year. Yes, January is usually the coolest time of the year, and it's not as humid, but you still do want those breaks in the aircon. But for me as well, it's all down to immersion and the theming. So for me, as soon as you enter that queue, that is your experience starting. So I feel like a really good queue is really well themed.
I agree entirely, and I think it's really important that one of the things Disney's been able to separate itself from compared to the likes of over here we'd say Six Flags back in the UK, you'd say sort of Alton Towers or Thorpe Park or something like that, is the theming commences really throughout the ride process, which is why when we were discussing last week, ones for me like Tomorrowland Speedway that just has got no theming at all, it doesn't feel very Disney-esque. But today we're going to talk about some that really do feel Disney-esque. So again, we haven't corroborated. We're 11 episodes into this. We've had zero agreement at any point, basically, on what our top three are. And we've gone for three more each again today. No collaboration beforehand. And as always, we will allow Lauren to start first. So Lauren, in no particular order, what is one of your best queues in Walt Disney World?
Well, I think I'm going to get the obvious one out of the way. For anyone that's listened to our previous episodes, I love Expedition Everest. And for me, their queue is top notch. As I say, from as soon as you enter that queue, not talking about extended queues here, because obviously that isn't part of the experience. But as soon as you enter the proper queue, you're straight into all the artifacts. The amount of attention and the effort that Joe Roddy and his team really put into that queue is just amazing. Sometimes Everest isn't that long of a queue, so sometimes you don't really have that time to think about it and to look at it all, especially if you go through the single rider queue or the lightning lane. You bypass a lot of that. But if the queue is, say, 60 minutes long or something, don't think, oh my goodness, it's a 60-minute queue. Actually take that opportunity to have a look at all of the exciting stuff that they've got in that queue. It's not interactive, don't get me wrong, there's not stuff to do in the queue, but it's all about looking at things, the artifacts, and just really immersing yourself in that. I find it amazing.
I couldn't agree more, actually. And you read some of the stories about the Sherpas who carry packs up Everest and Pete, and some Sherpas that have done it 12, 15, 20 times, and it's fascinating. And I actually think it speaks to a little bit about what Animal Kingdom should be, which is, yes, it is a theme park, yes, it is an attraction, but there is also an educational aspect to it as well. And I think that's one of the things that Epcot unfortunately has moved away from in recent years compared to where it used to be. But I think Everest absolutely captures that, and it helps that the ride is good as well. So yeah. I completely agree. I think Everest was not on my top 3, but I absolutely see where you're coming from. I completely agree, and I think every time I do it, it gives me another appreciation for what the Sherpas and those who climb Everest have done. I have to go to a different park. However, none of my top 3 are in Animal Kingdom. We'll start with one of mine that's in. Let's go with Hollywood Studios. The Tower of Terror has to be an immensely themed portion, and it's a great example of how Disney splits the queue as well, because as yes, the outside bit in summer not great, but as soon as you're on the run up to the tower itself and the Hollywood Tower Hotel, you get a real vibe for it. The music and the theming is just quite eerie as you walk in and you see the sort of the ground lobby with cobwebs hanging here and the seats not arranged, and all of that part is brilliant. That by itself would be great. But then when you get into the room where you've got the TV in the corner and they're talking about how, on a night very much like the one in question, like all of these things make it such a great experience. I think the only part it's let down is the bit after that room where you just sort of you got the boiler room where you're just sort of waiting to get on the service elevator, and it's a bit like nah. But I also think part of one of the things that makes this so great that we have discussed in previous episodes, but not when we've been talking about these queues, is the cast members who lean into the theme make it even better. Now, there have been a few, I would argue, over the last probably decade, maybe longer, fewer cast members lead into it as much as they used to. Is that because they've been told to? Is that because people have complained? Is that because they're not paid enough to want to do it? I don't know. But yeah, for me, Tower of Terror, what a ride.
Yeah, you're totally right there. It's not on my list, but I think the main reason why it's not in my list is that boiler room bit and the outside bit, because it is boiling and you're just going around trees and stuff. And sometimes if the queue is long, then obviously it's out there. But yeah, I do get your point. The cobwebs, the attention to detail, and as you say, the cast members, I remember some of them when we've recently been is when the kind of elevator doors shut, he just put his hands on and like put them down the windows, and it really kind of got you. You were like, oh gosh, am I really going into something here? And that's all part of that loading system, isn't it? So yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, yeah, happy days. And so we're both in agreement there then. So I've said Tower of Terror, you said Expedition Everest. Where are we going to next then, Lauren?
I feel like this might be on both of our lists.
So do I. Are we going to the Magic Kingdom?
Oh no.
Oh God.
I'm staying in Hollywood Studios.
Okay.
Rise of the Resistance.
Oh, no, it's not on my list.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
keep going,
as you know, if you've listened to our podcast before or watched our videos, I don't know squat about Star Wars. So for it to be on my list, it's quite up there, personally. It's the immersion for me. I absolutely love, when I'm really, really sorry. I'm going to butcher all of this here because I don't know what it all means. But when you've got past the thing that moves, when the transportation tank thing,
yeah,
you're not actually moving, but you feel like you're moving. Yep. And you go into the stormtroopers, it's just so foreboding, and you just think, oh my goodness, this is actually something massive. And then the cast members, as you're saying from Tower of Terror, really lean into that theme. They really get you there. And I was trying to make a joke with one of them, and they were really deadpan. And I thought, wow, you're doing your job really well here. And then the way that they kind of segregate you into the lines as well, it feels very, you need to go there. You are orange. You got, it's not like, two, you're party of two. Yeah, come on, just come on, orange. It's not like that. They're really leaning into it. And then for me, again, part of the queue is getting locked in that room. And then you see the big scary man.
Kylo Ren. Carry on.
That's it. You see him. But then you get like taken out of the queue, out of the room by the resistance. And I just think it's all really sensational and really exciting. It's an engaging queue. You don't feel like you're waiting. It feels like the ride starts as soon as you get into that transportation pod. And I'm just a massive fan.
So, two things. Three things. Sorry, three things. One, early on, we said that if we ever get to 100 subscribers, Lauren's going to have to watch a Star Wars film because she's never watched one. And there will be a poll out to decide which one she watches. I know which one I wanted to watch if she could only watch one. But that's probably not what anyone here is thinking about. So that was the first point I had. Second point I had, you're right about the interactions with the cast, although as following on my previous statement, Terra, it's less common now. I imagine some people probably complained, some people probably got in trouble, so they've really toned it down, which is really unfortunate. And thirdly, the reason it wasn't on my list is not because of, as you say, you've got the great reveal where you've got those dozens of stormtroopers and you're in that room there, and like the little puddle jumper bit where you sort of, you get tracked into the homing beacons, so you have to step out, and all of that is good. Just think everything before that is just awful. Like you are sat in a cave for what feels like days where you just lose all track of time and resemblance. It's just there's not enough seating. You really are stood for most of the time because it's not like your dislike for Space Birth. It's not a continuous movement on, so it's just so boring. And so I accept the first time you see that room and the grand reveal, I agree. I think when you've seen it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, it really does start to wear. But yet again, another good example of how we do not have the same things on the list, because I thought the next one was guaranteed. Because you won't have my last one. I know you won't have my last one.
Don't say Carousel.
It's not the Carousel of Progress, but that is an honourable mention. And the reason why the Carousel of Progress is an honourable mention, for those that don't know, when you stand outside the theatre, they've got the history playing on monitors. A little bit of an interview with the Sherman brothers, who wrote the soundtrack for There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. A little bit with Walt. A little bit about the 1964-65 World Fair. So even though I didn't intend on speaking about the Carousel of Progress on this episode, I've managed to do it yet again. But no, I am, however, in the Magic Kingdom, because it's Haunted Mansion.
Okay.
Was that on your list?
Yeah, so that's my
we have agreement. We have a crossover. A Haunted Mansion for me is just fantastic. And Lauren, I'll let you take it away. What is it about Haunted Mansion that for you makes it one of the best queues in Walt Disney World?
I absolutely love it. It's the music, it's the just the general air of foreboding. Something's going to happen, and what is it going to be? And since they've extended the queue into the graveyard as well, I know that that's not recent, but for someone who's been going to Disney for as long as I've been alive, it's in fairly recent times they've extended the queue. And that's very interactive as well. So when I've taken my children on it, they've had something to do in the queue, which is always really helpful, because standing in queues with children is really difficult. Standing
queues with you is really difficult.
Thanks for that. And obviously the cast members, it's all coming back to that experience, isn't it? The ride really starting from you entering the queue. The cast members having that deadpan look and really like ushering you into this really big and dark room. It's the painting, and then when you go into the stretching room, it's all the painting stretching, and it's like, oh, are you going up, or is this, I just absolutely love it. And then also it does move fairly quickly as well, with you have a big chunk at each stage. So I do feel like it is a moving queue, which is helpful as well in the Florida heat. I don't know if you've got much to add.
No, I agree. I think, and I'm glad we finally have some consensus somewhere in the top three. Everything you said, everything from the drawing route. Is this route actually stretching, or is it your imagination? Like, I've got better at not narrating along with it because I appreciate that is quite annoying when people do that. I just stand there and I just like lip read along with it. No, Haunted Mansion, absolutely. I do have one. I do have one more, but I also have an honourable mention. And I'll do the one more first, which is this is a queue of sorts. We're going back to Hollywood Studios.
Are you stretching the rules here?
No, it is a queue. Let me explain. It is a queue. It's the queue for One Man's Dream. Because One Man's Dream is the sit-down show, which is about a 10-minute show about the history of Walt's life. His connection to Marceline, Missouri, Kansas City, his move over to Hollywood, his work with his brother Roy, etc. But the wait area, which I'm going to call a queue for the purpose of this, the wait area covers both recent Disney history, but also a lot further back as well. And there's physical sets, you can see different things. There's plaques on the wall we give some history, and it is it's what I refer to as a Disney approved version of Disney history. It's all very positive, but there's the Disney version of Disney history. But I think that's fantastic, and there's a bit of education. It's out the sun again. There's never really much of a queue for it, and you can genuinely spend half an hour just wandering around looking at the sets. So I think that counts. My honourable mention, though, is cheating a bit. This one is definitely cheating. It's the old test track queue. When test track,
cheating.
That is cheating. It is cheating, isn't it? It is. It's by every definition cheating. It hasn't existed for over a decade. But the old test track queue, when you were like a test dummy and you're in there and you're slamming doors and just like that was the immersion. That was you were in it, you were part of it. And so we're not going to give it too much credence because it hasn't existed for a long time. And when I say old test track, I'm not on about Test Track 2.0 that's just gone. I'm on about old Test Track. If anyone can hear any background noise, one of my cats has decided that today is the day to play with a pen. And now he's lost the pen and doesn't know what to do with himself.
I hope it's like a Lunai pen or whatever you call it.
Alani.
Alani.
And no, it wasn't an Alani pen. I have two orange cats, and for anyone who is an orange cat owner, you would know that means there are no brain cells between them. Literally not a single thought has ever been had. But with that said, we can begin to wrap up then. So, Lauren, your top three in no particular order were Everest, Rise of the Resistance, and then also the Haunted Mansion. Mine, Haunted Mansion, Tower of Terror. A little bit of a cheat by saying the queue to One Man's Dream, but then a massive cheat as an honourable mention, say the old test track. So I think that was a good episode though, and I'm quite pleased that we finally have some consensus. It's quite nice. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you do like the content, please consider subscribing. Lauren can do the finger point to make up for last week. Following us on Instagram and TikTok at Monorail Memoirs. If you do have anything you wish to email us, please contact us at monorailmemoirs@gmail.com. And thank you again to Clara for buying us a coffee. That is much appreciated. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, please stand clear of the doors. Thanks very much, folks.
Bye.